plants. Let's talk about it. So check out this Nephthytis, which it just looks terrible. So we're gonna trim a bunch of these leaves off, and then rather than, we could just eliminate all this and it'll just keep growing more. But in order to propagate as well, we'll trim these off, cut these, put them in water, and then we'll have more plants later, and we won't have this insane mess of long, leggy leaves. Was generally underwatered, and that's why a lot of those leaves died like that. And you can even see here, this type of leaf that should just be trimmed right off. This is unnecessary. You can see it's not coming in well at all. So that kind of leaf growth should be taken off. This one here, this should be taken off. Any of the other parts, they can be taken off. That one's just not coming in well, and a lot of it's because it's being underwatered and it just needs more water. So we're gonna trim these off next and put them in water. I'm leaving this section because I can see a leaf is coming in, so I want to leave that. That's healthy leaf growth. Again, this is not healthy leaf growth, so we're just cutting that off. I do clean my scissors before I use them on any plant. So I have these scissors. You can use whatever scissors, but I use these so that if there's any material from another plant or something else that could infect this plant, it's not going to, because I've cleaned it before I used it. Now we're to the point where I'm gonna cut these ends off and I'm gonna put these in water. So I wanna find a node, and I can honestly find any of these. Any of these absolutely work. And with whatever plant you're cutting, I'm looking for where I want this to have leaf growth. And I really wanna have leaf growth kind of closer into the plant. So I think I'll cut it here. And I'm gonna cut it where this node is. Here, once I put this in water, I need to slice this so that I'm cutting and leaving this section here. You don't want to put anything in water where the node is, where it's not going to, you don't want to leave anything in water. You don't want to leave any stem area below the node because it can rot out. Especially if you are not putting it in water. If you're putting it in soil, it's very highly likely. If you're putting this in soil and there's a stem after this node, there's a high chance that extra stem past that node can rot out, and it's going to infect the rest of the plant. So I've trimmed this up, move these over. You can see this is far, far neater now. This will all start growing in, be nice, fresh new leaves. These are gonna get put in water. I'm gonna trim these off to where I want the roots to grow. And I wanna trim it just below that node where there's these little dots. Now I'll take these and put those in water. I'm using nothing else beside filtered water from a Brita filter, so I don't have to use bottled water. I just put them in. And then they'll start growing roots. I prefer this method. Some people prefer putting them in dirt. I prefer this method because for me, I can see the growth. There's a lot less chance that it's going to get an infection this way. I just feel like this is a safer method for me. It does take a bit longer, but in some ways, dirt can take a bit longer because the dirt method there's more chances for it to go awry. Okay, so here's this plant. This is looks like final. And then the cuttings will be living over here in this little glass vase so I can see how the roots are doing as it grows. And here's my gecko. She's looking for food. She's like, what do you got? This plant I made cuttings of a few weeks ago and put it in here. So here's the roots now. Make sure when you're putting the plant in water that you change the water out every few days or once a week so that the water doesn't get stale. It'll keep the roots healthy. And then I'm gonna put this in the other planter that I just cut to kind of fill in that open area now. So here I've got 1, 2, this one has a lot of roots. 3, 4. So this one didn't seem to root right here, so I'm not gonna put this in the water in the soil. This one kind of rooted. I'm like, do I want to add this? I think I will. You can see I didn't trim the total end and this kind of rotted out a little bit. So be aware of that. With this one, the roots have actually come in higher than this section. So I'm gonna cut off this part because we don't need it. And this cutting is perfect. This rooted right at the bottom of that node. It feels good. I'm gonna clean this off a little bit because it feels a little gooey and I don't want there to be any bacteria in there. So I just rinsed these off and now I'm just gonna make some space. And now this planter looks nice and full. And that'll fill in really nicely.